Commander Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Vanguard, watching the stars through the main screen. His hands shook as he read the final message from Earth Defense Command. The words were simple, but they made his blood run cold. Tell them we remember. Then nothing. Complete silence from humanity's homeworld. The Zephyrian Coalition had been attacking Earth for 3 days. Their massive ships surrounded the blue planet like hungry wolves around a wounded deer. Every human colony across the galaxy watched in horror as their homeworld burned under alien weapons. The Coalition demanded total surrender. They wanted humans to give up all their colonies and become slaves to alien masters. Jake had expected Earth to fight back with everything they had. He expected to see the great defense fleets launch from Luna Base and Mars Station. He expected humanity to show these aliens what they were made of. Instead, Earth just went quiet. No more transmissions, no more calls for help, no more anything. Lieutenant Susan Blake sat at her communication station, her fingers dancing across the controls. She had been trying to reach Earth for 6 hours. Now, every frequency was dead. Every emergency channel was silent. Even the automated weather reports had stopped broadcasting. It was like the entire planet had simply vanished from the galaxy. "Commander," Susan said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm picking up something strange. All human vessels and stations across the galaxy have gone silent at exactly the same time. Not destroyed, sir. Just silent." Jake felt his heart sink into his stomach. This was not what he had expected. Where was the famous human stubbornness? Where was the fighting spirit that had carried their species across the stars? Had they really just given up without a fight? On the main screen, alien news broadcasts showed Zephyrian leaders celebrating their easy victory. They had expected months of bloody warfare. They had prepared for desperate human attacks on their colonies. Instead, they got silence. The alien generals spoke proudly about how they had conquered humanity without losing a single ship in the final battle. Admiral Peter Kane commanded the human fleet stationed at Proxima Centauri. His weathered face showed no emotion as he watched the last transmission from Earth. Around him, his officers waited for orders. Some looked ready to charge toward Earth and die fighting. Others seemed broken by the news of their homeworld's silence. Kane stood slowly from his command chair. His gray uniform was perfectly pressed, his medals gleaming under the bridge lights. He had fought in 3 wars before this one. He had never lost a battle. He had never retreated from an enemy. But today felt different. Today felt like the end of everything he had ever believed about humanity. "All ships," Kane said into his communicator. His voice was calm and steady. "Protocol 7 is now in effect. God help us all." The transmission ended with a sharp click. Across the fleet, ship captains looked at each other with confusion. Protocol 7 was not in any of their training manuals. It was not part of standard military procedure. None of them had ever heard of it before. On Kepler Station, civilian engineer Lisa Chen watched as military personnel began moving through the corridors with urgent purpose. They were evacuating all non-essential personnel to the escape pods. Families were being separated. Children were crying as their parents put them on transport ships bound for distant colonies. "What's happening?" Lisa asked a passing soldier. The young man looked at her with eyes full of fear and sadness. "Protocol 7, ma'am," he said. "We have to get everyone off the station." Lisa felt her blood turn to ice. She had worked on Kepler Station for 10 years. She had helped design its defense systems and life support networks. She knew every corridor and every room, but she had never heard of any Protocol 7. The station's main computer began broadcasting a countdown in multiple languages. The numbers appeared on every screen and echoed through every speaker. But the countdown was not in any human language that Lisa recognized. It seemed to be written in some kind of code that made her head hurt to look at. Alien traders and diplomats who lived on the station gathered in the main plaza, demanding answers. They wanted to know why they were being forced to leave. They wanted to know what the countdown meant. But the human military personnel just shook their heads and continued the evacuation. Back on the Vanguard, Jake received reports from human colonies across the galaxy. New Tokyo, New Berlin, New London, and dozens of other worlds had all gone silent within minutes of each other. It was like someone had thrown a switch and turned off every human voice in space. But something else was happening too. Alien merchant ships reported strange readings on their sensors. They spoke of ghost signals coming from empty space. They described equipment malfunctions that their engineers could not explain. Some alien crews even reported having strange dreams about humans watching them from the darkness between stars. Susan Blake picked up one of these reports on her communications array. An alien cargo ship near the Vega system claimed that their navigation computer had been displaying human text messages. The messages were in perfect alien languages, but they all said the same thing. "We are coming." "Commander," Susan said, "I think something big is about to happen. These reports from alien ships, the countdown on Kepler Station, Protocol 7, I think Earth didn't surrender. I think they're planning something." Jake nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand that humanity's silence might not be defeat. It might be something much more dangerous. Throughout history, humans had been at their most deadly when they were quiet, when they stopped talking and started planning. The coalition forces around Earth continued their celebration. They divided up human territories among themselves like pieces of a cake. They planned which colonies would become mining worlds and which would be turned into alien settlements. They made lists of human technologies they wanted to study, and human prisoners they wanted to interrogate. But as the hours passed, more and more strange reports came in from across the galaxy. Alien outposts near human colonies reported equipment failures. Deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures moving through hyperspace. And everywhere there were whispers of humans in places where no humans should be. The galaxy was about to learn that when Earth went silent, it was not because humanity had given up. It was because they had stopped pretending to be something they were not. The silence was not the end of human resistance. It was the beginning of something that would make the aliens wish they had never heard of Earth at all. In the darkness between stars, something ancient and patient began to move. Something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. Something that would teach the galaxy why humans had survived every challenge their harsh home world had thrown at them. The silence was not defeat. The silence was the calm before a storm that would reshape the galaxy forever. 3 weeks passed after Earth went silent. The galaxy began to breathe easier. Alien merchants reopened trade routes that had been closed during the brief conflict. The Zephyrian coalition started drawing maps of former human territories, deciding which worlds would belong to which alien species. Everyone agreed that the human problem had been solved quickly and cleanly. Dr. Richard Stone crawled through the maintenance tunnels beneath Europa Station. He had been hiding in the research facility's lower levels since the attack on Earth began. His clothes were dirty and torn. His beard had grown long and wild. But his eyes burned with a fierce intelligence that had kept him alive when others had given up. Richard carried a small data pad that contained 50 years of research. Every alien species humanity had ever met was documented in that device. Their biology, their psychology, their home worlds, their greatest fears, and most importantly, their weaknesses. Information that had been gathered through decades of peaceful contact and diplomatic exchanges. The research facility on Europa had been built deep under the moon's ice surface. It was designed to look like a simple mining operation to any alien visitors. But beneath the fake mining equipment was one of humanity's most secret projects, a complete database of every alien threat the species might one day face. Richard had spent his entire career studying alien cultures. He had lived among the Zephyrians for 5 years as a cultural exchange student. He had learned their language, their customs, and their military strategies. He had done the same with a dozen other species, all in the name of peaceful understanding and cooperation. Now he understood that his life's work had a different purpose. Every friendly conversation with alien diplomats had been intelligence gathering. Every cultural exchange had been reconnaissance. Every trade agreement had been an opportunity to study potential enemies. Captain Helen Ross stood in the command center of New Geneva Underground. The facility stretched for miles beneath the Swiss mountains. It had been built in secret over 50 years disguised as a series of research installations and military training facilities. Millions of humans lived in similar underground cities across Earth. Helen watched the main display screen showing the surface of Earth. Alien ships circled the planet like vultures, scanning for signs of human life. They found burned cities and empty military bases. They found exactly what humanity wanted them to find: evidence of total defeat and complete surrender. But the aliens did not know about the hidden cities. They did not know about the carefully planned evacuation that had moved Earth's most important people underground months before the attack began. They did not know that beneath their feet, humanity was very much alive and planning their next move. "Status report," Helen said to her communications officer. "All underground facilities are reporting green across the board." The officer replied, "New Tokyo Underground has successfully maintained radio silence. New York Deep Base is ready for Phase 2 operations. Moscow Hidden reports all military personnel are in position." Helen nodded. Phase 1 had been perfect. Let the aliens think they had won. Let them believe that humanity was broken and defeated. Let them make the mistake of underestimating what humans were capable of when their backs were against the wall. Meanwhile, alien species across the galaxy began reporting strange phenomena. Cargo ships traveling between colonies spoke of sensor readings that made no sense. Military patrols found their navigation systems displaying impossible data. Mining operations on distant asteroids reported equipment failures that their engineers could not explain. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Intelligence, Officer Zektar read through dozens of similar reports. Workers on mining stations claimed they were having nightmares about humans watching them from empty space. Transport pilots said their autopilot systems were taking them off course without explanation. Even civilian merchants reported feeling like they were being followed by invisible ships. Zektar dismissed most of the reports as stress reactions from the recent conflict. Wars always made people nervous and jumpy. It was natural for the population to imagine threats that did not exist. But something about the reports troubled him. They were too consistent, too similar, too widespread to be random panic. The reports all mentioned the same thing: a feeling of being watched, a sense that something was moving in the darkness between stars, equipment that seemed to develop minds of its own, and always, the sensation that humans were still out there somewhere, planning something terrible. Dr. Stone finally reached his destination after crawling through maintenance tunnels for hours. The hidden communication array was built into what looked like a water recycling station, but beneath the fake pipes and pumps was one of the most powerful transmitters in the galaxy. Richard activated the system and began uploading his research data. The information flowed through hidden channels to underground facilities across Earth and human colonies throughout space. Battle plans based on detailed knowledge of alien weaknesses. Psychological profiles that would allow human forces to predict enemy behavior. Cultural analysis that revealed exactly how to strike each species where it would hurt the most. The upload completed just as alien security forces discovered his hiding place. Richard smiled as he heard their footsteps in the corridor outside. His life's work was done. The information had been transmitted. Now humanity would know exactly how to make their enemies suffer. Captain Helen Ross received the data upload in her command center. She studied the files with growing excitement. Dr. Stone had given them the keys to the galaxy. With this information, human forces could strike at alien colonies with surgical precision. They could target the specific fears and weaknesses of each enemy species. "Begin Phase 2 preparation," Helen ordered. "Send word to all underground facilities. The time for hiding is almost over." Across the galaxy, human sleeper agents received coded transmissions. People who had lived among alien populations for decades suddenly remembered their true purpose. Diplomats became spies. Merchants became saboteurs. Teachers became intelligence gatherers, all of them waiting for the signal to begin the real war. On distant colony worlds, alien families went to sleep not knowing that their human neighbors had been watching and planning for years. They did not know that every conversation had been recorded. Every weakness had been noted. Every fear had been catalogued. The Zephyrian coalition held victory parades on their homeworlds. Their leaders gave speeches about the dawn of a new galactic order. They spoke of how easy it had been to defeat humanity. They congratulated themselves on solving the human problem without significant casualties. But in the deepest space, something moved through the darkness. Massive structures that had been hidden for decades began powering up ancient engines. Ships that had been waiting in the cold void between stars started their long journey toward inhabited systems. Weapons that had been built in secret began, charging their deadly systems. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They had confused humanity's patience with weakness. They had mistaken careful planning for cowardice. They had thought that silence meant defeat. They were about to learn that when humans went silent, it was not because they had given up. It was because they were done talking and ready to begin the real work. The work of teaching the galaxy exactly what happened to those who threatened humanity's survival. The calm before the storm was ending. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would understand why Earth had gone silent, and they would wish they had never heard the name of humanity at all. The first sign appeared near Alpha Centauri. Space itself seemed to tear open as something massive emerged from what had looked like empty void. The structure was dark and angular, covered in armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect. It was larger than any ship the galaxy had ever seen. Alien sensors could barely measure its true size. This was the UES Retribution, humanity's first true warship. It had been built in secret over 30 years, hidden behind advanced stealth technology that made it invisible to alien detection systems. The ship had been waiting in the darkness, watching and planning while the galaxy celebrated humanity's defeat. Colonel Danny Foster stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking out at the stars through the main display. His uniform was black as space with no decorations or medals. He did not need symbols of rank to show his authority. The crew around him moved with the precise efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Open all channels," Danny ordered. "All frequencies. Every language in our database." The communication officer nodded and activated the ship's massive transmitter array. The message that followed reached every inhabited system in the galaxy within minutes. It was broadcast in perfect alien languages, translated with an accuracy that showed humanity's deep understanding of their enemies. "You wanted Earth silent," Danny said, his voice calm and cold. "You have it. But understand this. We are not Earth. We are what Earth creates when it needs to survive. We are what happens when you push humanity too far." The message repeated across the galaxy in Zephyrian, Altarian, Vegan, and 50 other alien languages. Each translation was perfect, capturing not just the words, but the cultural meaning behind them. The aliens realized that humans had been studying them far more carefully than they had ever imagined. Dr. Stone's research database had been distributed to human strike teams across the galaxy. These teams had been in position for years, disguised as merchants, diplomats, and refugees. Now they activated, hitting targets with surgical precision that left alien military leaders stunned and confused. On the Zephyrian mining world of Kepler-7, a human maintenance worker named Carl Brooks walked calmly through the main processing facility. He had worked there for 8 years, fixing equipment and maintaining systems. His alien supervisors trusted him completely. They had no idea that he had been mapping every weakness in their operation. Carl placed small devices throughout the facility as he did his normal maintenance rounds. The devices were not bombs. They were psychological warfare tools designed specifically for Zephyrian psychology. When activated, they would create sounds and lights that triggered deep evolutionary fears in the Zephyrian mind. The devices activated at precisely the same moment across dozens of Zephyrian worlds. Mining operations shut down as workers fled, in terror from sounds that reminded them of their species' ancient predators. Military bases went into lockdown as soldiers found themselves paralyzed by primal fear. Civilian populations crowded into their homes, hiding from threats that existed only in their genetic memory. Lieutenant Amy Turner led a reconnaissance team through the corridors of Station Omega, the Coalition's most secure intelligence facility. The station was supposed to be impossible to infiltrate. Its security systems had been designed by the best alien minds in the galaxy, but Amy and her team walked through the facility like they owned it. They did, in a sense. Human engineers had helped design the station's computer systems 20 years earlier. Hidden subroutines in the code had been waiting for activation. When the time came, security doors opened for human infiltrators. Alarm systems ignored their presence. Guard rotations were altered to create gaps in coverage. Amy's team was not there to steal information or sabotage equipment. They were there to leave a message. In the station's main briefing room, they placed a holographic projector. When alien intelligence officers arrived for their morning meeting, they would find a three-dimensional image of Earth hanging in the air above their conference table. But it would not be the Earth they expected to see. It would be Earth as it truly was. Alive, hidden, protected. The hologram would show underground cities teeming with human life. It would display military facilities that alien sensors had never detected. It would reveal the truth that humanity had not been defeated, only preparing. The Zephyrian Coalition's leaders gathered in their Grand Council chamber on the homeworld. They had been meeting to discuss the division of human territories when the reports began flooding in. Mining operations shut down by mysterious equipment failures. Military bases paralyzed by unknown psychological attacks. Intelligence facilities infiltrated by humans who seemed to know their security better than they did. "How is this possible?" demanded High Commander Zekmol. "We destroyed their fleets. We conquered their worlds. We saw their cities burning." The intelligence reports told a different story. Humans had been preparing for this war for decades. Every diplomatic mission had been reconnaissance. Every trade agreement had been an opportunity to plant monitoring devices. Every cultural exchange had been military intelligence gathering. Captain Ben Clark commanded the UES Nemesis as it approached a Zephyrian patrol fleet. The alien ships moved to intercept, confident in their superior numbers and firepower. They had destroyed human vessels before. They expected another easy victory. But the Nemesis did not engage in traditional combat. Instead, it began broadcasting on all frequencies. The transmission showed recordings from Zephyrian colonies that no longer existed. Families screaming as their homes burned. Children crying for parents who would never come home. The final messages of Zephyrian civilians who had died in human counterstrikes. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Zephyrian military officers recognized voices of their own family members among the recordings. They heard the death cries of friends and colleagues. The images showed destruction so complete and systematic that it could only have been planned with intimate knowledge of Zephyrian culture and society. As the alien fleet struggled with the emotional shock of the broadcast, the Nemesis began dismantling their ships with weapons they had never seen before. The attacks were surgical, disabling engines and weapon systems while leaving life support intact. The humans wanted prisoners, not corpses. They wanted witnesses to spread fear throughout the galaxy. Engineer Laura Price sat in the Central Command facility of New Geneva Underground. Her fingers moved across holographic displays that showed the status of every piece of technology humanity had ever shared with alien species. Trade goods, scientific equipment, communication devices, navigation systems. All of it contained hidden subroutines that had been waiting for this moment. "Activate the shutdown protocol," Laura ordered. Across the galaxy, alien civilization began collapsing from within. Computers crashed simultaneously. Communication networks went silent. Transportation systems stopped functioning. Power grids failed in carefully orchestrated cascades that left entire worlds in darkness. The aliens realized with horror that humans had been playing a longer game than anyone had imagined. Every gift of human technology had been a Trojan horse. Every trade deal had been preparation for this moment. Humanity had spent decades placing the tools of their enemies' destruction directly into their hands. On the Altarian homeworld, civilian populations found themselves cut off from their own infrastructure. The transportation system that carried millions of beings to work each day simply stopped. The communication network that connected families across the planet went dark. Even simple household devices began displaying messages in human languages. The messages were all the same. We tried to be your friends. You chose to make us your enemies. Now you will learn what that means. The galaxy was beginning to understand that the silence from Earth had not been defeat. It had been preparation. Humanity had not surrendered. They had simply stopped pretending to be weak and helpless. The species that had seemed so peaceful and cooperative had revealed their true nature. They were patient. They were thorough. They were absolutely ruthless when threatened, and they had been planning this moment for far longer than their enemies could have imagined. The real war was just beginning, and the aliens were starting to realize that they had made a terrible mistake in underestimating what humans would do to survive. What followed was not a war in any traditional sense. Wars had rules, negotiations, and the possibility of surrender. What humanity unleashed was something far more terrifying. It was an extermination campaign designed with scientific precision and carried out with the cold efficiency of a species that had learned to treat warfare as an exact science. Captain Ben Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Nemesis as it approached the Zephyrian fleet stationed near their mining colony of refuge. The alien commanders expected a battle. They had prepared their ships for combat, charged their weapons, and positioned themselves for maximum tactical advantage. Instead, Ben began broadcasting across all communication channels. The transmission was not a demand for surrender or a declaration of war. It was something that chilled the alien officers to their cores. Human voices speaking in perfect Zephyrian, reading the names of every civilian who had died in the recent attacks on Zephyrian colonies. The list went on for hours. Men, women, children, teachers, farmers, artists, engineers. Every single being who had perished in humanity's systematic destruction of alien settlements. The humans had not only killed with precision, they had catalogued every death with the thoroughness of scientists conducting an experiment. As the names echoed through space, the Nemesis began its attack. But this was not random destruction. Each Zephyrian ship was disabled in a specific way designed to cause maximum psychological trauma. Weapon systems were destroyed first, leaving the crews helpless. Then, life support was damaged just enough to create fear without immediate death. The alien crews found themselves trapped in crippled vessels, listening to the names of their dead while human ships moved around them like predators playing with wounded prey. Some Zephyrian officers tried to activate self-destruct systems rather than face capture. They discovered that even their own ships no longer obeyed their commands. Engineer Laura Price had done her work too well. Every piece of Zephyrian technology contained human code that gave humanity complete control when activated. The aliens were trapped inside machines that had become prisons, operated by an enemy that understood their systems better than they did. Commander Steve Turner led the assault on Zephyrian Military Academy, the most prestigious training facility in the WoW Coalition. The academy had produced generations of alien officers who prided themselves on their tactical brilliance and warrior traditions. They prepared to make a heroic last stand against the human attackers. But Steve's forces did not come to fight. They came to make a statement. The humans did not destroy the academy. They did not harm the cadets or faculty. Instead, they converted the entire facility into something that would haunt the Zephyrian species for generations to come. Every wall in the academy was covered with holographic displays showing the names of humans who had died in the siege of Earth. But these were not just names on a list. Each display showed personal information about the deceased, their families, their hopes, their dreams, their final messages to loved ones. The main parade ground was converted into a memorial garden where holographic figures of human children played eternally in the artificial sunlight. These were the innocents who had died when the Coalition attacked civilian targets on Earth. Their laughter echoed through the academy corridors day and night. In the central lecture hall, a massive holographic Earth rotated slowly above the floor. But it was not the green and blue planet the galaxy had known. This Earth was scarred and burning, showing the damage inflicted by alien weapons. A constant audio track played the final transmissions from human families as their homes were destroyed. Though psychological impact spread through the Zephyrian military faster than any defeat in battle could have accomplished, officers who visited the academy returned to their posts as broken beings, unable to function normally after witnessing humanity's monument to their grief and rage. Dr. Stone's research had identified the deep cultural fears of every alien species. Humans use this knowledge like a surgeon's scalpel, cutting directly to the psychological weaknesses that would cause maximum trauma with minimum effort. Against the Altarians, humans deployed weapons that created specific electromagnetic frequencies. These frequencies triggered chemical reactions in Altarian brain tissue that caused overwhelming feelings of despair and hopelessness. Entire Altarian fleets surrendered without firing a shot, as their crews became too depressed to continue fighting. For the Vegan Republic, humanity used their knowledge of vegan pack psychology. Humans infiltrated vegan communication networks and began transmitting false messages that made it appear as though pack leaders were betraying their followers. Within days, vegan society collapsed into civil war as different groups turned on each other in confusion and rage. The galaxy's other species watched in horror as the coalition members fell one by one to human attacks that seemed to strike at the very soul of each alien culture. The humans were not just winning battles. They were destroying entire civilizations from within by exploiting weaknesses that the aliens themselves had not even known existed. Fleet Admiral Janet Cole commanded the human forces that surrounded the Zephyrian homeworld. The planet's defense grid was the most powerful in the galaxy, protected by energy shields that could stop any conventional attack. But Janet was not planning a conventional attack. Instead, she began broadcasting a single message to the planet's surface. The transmission was sent to every communication device on the world simultaneously. Personal communicators, entertainment systems, emergency networks, even children's toys. Every electronic device on the planet displayed the same message in perfect Zephyrian script. We know where you live. We know your names. We know your families. We have been watching you for 50 years. We could have killed you at any time. We chose not to. Remember that choice when you decide how to treat humans in the future. The message was followed by personal information about random Zephyrians across the planet. Home addresses, family members, daily schedules, personal habits. Information that could only have been gathered through decades of careful surveillance. The clear implication was that humanity had been inside Zephyrian society so deeply that no one was safe. Panic spread across the homeworld faster than wildfire. Zephyrian families barricaded themselves in their homes, terrified that human agents might already be among them. The military tried to maintain order, but their own officers were just as frightened as the civilians they were supposed to protect. The genius of humanity's campaign was that they achieved total victory through fear, rather than destruction. Alien worlds surrendered not because their militaries were defeated, but because their populations were too terrified to continue fighting. The humans had shown that they could reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. Captain Helen Ross emerged from New Geneva Underground to address the galaxy from a rebuilt communications center on Earth's surface. Her message was broadcast on every alien network simultaneously, translated into hundreds of languages with perfect cultural accuracy. "We tried to be your friends," Helen said, her voice calm, but filled with unmistakable menace. "We offered you trade, cooperation, and peaceful coexistence. You responded by trying to enslave our species and destroy our homeworld. You have learned what happens when humanity stops trying to be nice." The message continued with a detailed explanation of humanity's new position in galactic affairs. Every alien species would now be subject to human oversight. All military technology would require human approval. Trade agreements would be written on humanity's terms. Most importantly, the story of Earth's siege would be taught to every alien child as a lesson in the consequences of threatening human survival. The galaxy's leaders realized that they faced a choice between submission and extinction. Humanity had demonstrated the ability to destroy alien civilization without firing a shot at civilian populations. They could shut down technology, manipulate psychology, and infiltrate security with an ease that suggested decades of preparation. Resistance was not just futile, it was impossible. The humans had embedded themselves so deeply into alien society that they could control their enemies' own systems against them. Every computer, every communication device, every piece of advanced technology was potentially a weapon in human hands. The war was over, not because humanity had won battles, but because they had revealed that the battle had been lost by the aliens years before it even began. Every diplomatic contact, every trade agreement, every cultural exchange had been preparation for this moment when humanity would reveal its true nature to a galaxy that had fatally underestimated what humans would do to survive. 6 months after Earth went silent, the galaxy had been reshaped into something unrecognizable. The Zephyrian coalition no longer existed as a political entity. Its member worlds had either surrendered unconditionally or found their governments, replaced by human administrators. The other alien species that had supported the siege watched in terrified silence as humanity established a new order based on fear and absolute control. President Nancy White stood at the podium in the rebuilt United Nations building on Earth. The structure had been constructed in record time using technology that the galaxy had never seen before. The building itself was a statement of human power, rising from ground that had been scorched by alien weapons only months earlier. Representatives from every alien species in the galaxy sat in the assembly hall, their eyes fixed on the human leader who would decide their species' fate. Many of them had supported the coalition's attack on Earth. Others had remained neutral, thinking they could avoid involvement in humanity's destruction. None of them had imagined they would be sitting here as conquered subjects. "We tried to be your partners," Nancy said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's perfect acoustics. "We offered you friendship, trade, and cooperation. We shared our technology and our culture. We opened our worlds to your students and diplomats. We believed that different species could work together for mutual benefit." The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They knew what was coming next. They had all seen the recordings of human forces systematically dismantling the coalition's military might. They had watched their own governments collapse as human agents activated hidden programs in their technology. "You chose to see our peaceful nature as weakness," Nancy continued. "You mistook our cooperation for submission. You decided that humanity should be enslaved or destroyed. You learned too late that we were never as helpless as we appeared." The speech was being broadcast across the galaxy on every available channel. Alien families watched from their homes as the human president explained the new reality they would all be living with. Children who had grown up thinking humans were just another trading partner learned that these beings had been watching and planning for decades. Dr. Stone sat in his new office as Director of Alien Affairs, reviewing reports from human observers stationed throughout the galaxy. Every alien world now hosted human cultural liaisons who monitored all government activities. These observers had complete access to alien communication networks, military planning, and civilian populations. The observers were not occupying forces in the traditional sense. They did not patrol alien streets or enforce curfews. Instead, they served as a constant reminder that humanity was always watching. Their presence ensured that no alien government could make plans against human interests without immediate detection. Stone's favorite report came from the former Zephyrian homeworld, where human observer Captain Lisa Chen had established a model program for alien compliance. The Zephyrian children now learned human history alongside their own cultural studies. They studied the siege of Earth and its aftermath as a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating other species. The lesson plans were designed with psychological precision. Zephyrian children learned about human families who had died in the coalition attacks. They studied the names and faces of human children who had been killed when alien weapons struck civilian targets. Most importantly, they learned about the patience and planning that had led to humanity's eventual victory. Admiral Peter Kane, now elderly and serving as Minister of Galactic Security, walked through the memorial garden that had been built where New York City once stood. The garden covered hundreds of acres, with each tree representing a human life lost in the siege. Holographic displays throughout the garden showed images and personal stories of the deceased. Kane stopped at a particular tree that had been planted in memory of his own grandson, killed when alien forces targeted a civilian evacuation transport. The boy had been 7 years old, excited about visiting his grandparents on Mars. His final message to Kane had been a drawing of the two of them fishing together on Earth. An alien visitor approached Kane as he stood beside the memorial tree. The visitor was a Zephyrian diplomat who had come to Earth to negotiate better terms for his species' surrender. He looked nervous and uncomfortable, clearly aware of who Kane was and what he represented. "Admiral," the alien said carefully, "my government has asked me to inquire about the possibility of reduced human oversight. We have complied with all requirements for the past 6 months. Our people have caused no trouble. Perhaps some of the monitoring systems could be scaled back." Kane turned to look at the alien diplomat. His eyes were cold and hard, showing no trace of sympathy or compromise. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had seen too much death and destruction to ever forget or forgive. "You want us to trust you again," Kane said quietly. "You want us to believe that your species has learned from its mistakes. You want us to give you another chance to betray our friendship." The alien diplomat nodded hopefully, not understanding the trap he had walked into with his request. Kane pointed to the memorial tree beside them. "This tree represents my grandson. He was 7 years old when your people killed him. He died because your species decided that human children were acceptable targets in your war against us." The diplomat's face went pale as he realized his mistake. He had asked the wrong person for mercy at the wrong time and place. "Forgiveness implies we will allow you to forget what you did to us," Kane continued. "We will not forget. Every generation of your children will learn about the day Earth went silent and what happened afterward. They will know that somewhere, in the darkness between stars, humanity is still watching and waiting." Kane stepped closer to the alien, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "If your species ever threatens us again, there will be no siege. There will be no demands for surrender. There will be no warnings. Next time, we will not leave anyone alive to remember what you did wrong." The diplomat fled from the memorial garden, his message to his government clear. There would be no reduced oversight. There would be no relaxation of human control. The galaxy's new masters had made their position perfectly clear. Captain Helen Ross stood in the command center of the rebuilt Earth Defense Network, watching displays that showed human ships patrolling every sector of known space. The network was more powerful than anything that had existed before the siege. It could detect and track every vessel in the galaxy simultaneously. But the real power was not in the ships or weapons. It was in the knowledge that humanity had gained about their enemies. Every alien species was cataloged down to their individual psychology. Every weakness had been identified and exploited. Every government had been infiltrated and monitored. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their military might. It was their patience and their memory. Humans could wait decades to strike back at their enemies. They could plan with a thoroughness that other species found almost incomprehensible. 50 years later, alien children across the galaxy learned the same lesson in their schools. They studied the day Earth went silent and how it marked the beginning of humanity's rise to galactic dominance. They learned that humans had achieved victory not through superior firepower, but through superior planning and preparation. The lesson always ended with the same phrase, spoken by teachers who had grown up in the aftermath of the siege. It was a warning that had become the most feared sentence in the galaxy, passed down from one generation to the next as a reminder of what happened to those who threatened human survival. Humanity remembers everything, and they are always watching. In the darkness between stars, human ships continued their eternal patrol, silent guardians ensuring that the galaxy would never forget the price of underestimating what humans would do to protect their own. The day Earth went silent had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo through history. When humans stopped talking, it was time to be afraid.